Thank you for joining us today in this conversation that we're having. We're emanating out of Boston, Massachusetts, and you're joining a conversation with Inversant. My name is Charles Desmond, and I'm the CEO of Inversant. We're a nonprofit organization based in Boston, Massachusetts, with our largest children-centered and family-centered savings account initiative in the Commonwealth. We were founded by Bob Hildreth, who is an entrepreneur and businessman in Boston, and I'm sure he's listening in our conversation today, which is great. I'm joined today by two outstanding young people who will be joining in our conversation. First, I'd like to introduce Rebekah Stewartson, who I believe you're going to see on the top of your screen. Rebekah is an undergraduate student at NYU in New York City. She's presently taking a leave this year just to do some work, expanding her experiences and gaining some further insights about the importance of higher education and how it's going to impact her life. Also joining me is Alex Ervin. Alex just recently graduated from Northeastern University, so he's come out the other side of the higher education tunnel and is looking towards the future with regards to what's going to happen with his career and opportunities that might become available to him. So today we're joining what we're calling an insight conversation with Inversant. And what we're trying to explore is what specifically are the challenges and issues that young people are experiencing as they're looking at higher education as a potential pathway for their future success and career. How might it lead to jobs and professions in the future? What kinds of challenges do they have to face with regards to institutions that they might consider attending? And what opportunities are available to them given the range of institutions that are operating in the country and options that those institutions are putting before young people as they make decisions. So let me say, in Inversant, what we've found in particular, since we focus on low-income, first-generation college-going students and new immigrant families, for low-income families, the challenges in higher education today couldn't be more risky or more problematic than they've ever been in the history of education in the country. It's primarily an issue because there are, one, so many institutions across the country, and secondly, because there are so many options that are presented to families and students about choices that they can make. These choices are profoundly important and have long-range implications for the success of these students as they matriculate through college, whether they may decide to leave college, or whether they decide to postpone going to college based on the knowledge and information and materials that are presented to them. So today, what we're going to be doing in our conversation with Alex and Becky, I'm calling her Becky because those of us who know her call her Becky, what we're going to try to do is to give some insights to all of you who are listening today as to the kinds of questions that young people and concerns that young people are having about the college opportunity equation as it's playing out right now in the country. Keep in mind, there are 20 million students across the country enrolled in higher education in the United States. We have, 4,000 or 5,000 colleges and universities, 2-year, 4-year, public, private, religiously affiliated, so many different choices that are available to students. And all of these choices come with potential opportunities and also with potential risks. And so what we'd like to do today is to delve a little bit deeper, sort of unpack this conversation about what young people are concerned about, what they're excited about, and how they make decisions about what they're going to do relative to their higher education options. So let me begin with Becky, because she's in the process right now and is engaged in a higher education institution. And you've made some decisions to attend a private institution in New York City, relatively expensive, highly competitive, but with rich programs that provide real opportunities for a success in the future. One, say a little bit about why you chose NYU, and based on your experience so far, what are your thoughts about the merits of the decision that you've made?
Thank you. I'd like to clarify and say I go to the New School University, which is in the same area as NYU, but it's not the same university. But thank
Yes.
you for the lovely introduction. And
Yes.
I chose a school in New York specifically because I wanted to be in that area and because the programs that my school had with journalism, I was very interested. They're also very known for their social justice and their activism, and that has always been important for me. So that's one of the reasons that I decided to choose that school, and that it was important for me to go to a place where I felt was accepting of all communities and that would welcome me. So yeah, thank you.
Please forgive me. I do know that you go to the new school. And
That's okay.
this is my first time on this show, so everyone gets to make a mistake or two as they unwind here. So, but thank you very much for that comment. Um, Alex, you do go to Northeastern, and you did graduate from Northeastern, so let's get back on the track with that. You've now, first you chose to go to Northeastern. It's like right in your own backyard. You didn't choose to leave the state and go to an out-of-state institution. Northeastern, again, highly competitive institution, rich academic programs. Full disclosure, I'm a Northeastern graduate myself, so I do have a deep respect for the work that they're doing. Why don't you say a few words about your decision-making process relative to selecting Northeastern?
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Charlie. So going into Northeastern, one of the things that stuck out was it is right here in Boston. So I was able to be close to home. So I still had that support just right down the road from me. And I actually commuted for a few of my years as a student. So that helped me save some money. And that also went to deciding to go to Northeastern ultimately. And then the other thing why I like Northeastern was just because of how many fields of study they have. So many different programs, so many different opportunities, and there's so much that you could explore while you were there. So that's why I went to Northeastern.
Both of the institutions, as most people who are listening to our session today are acutely aware of the fact of the massive student debt crisis that's unfolding in the country today. The latest numbers are there are about $1.7 billion worth of outstanding debt. There are tens of millions of students that are being affected by this debt. It's impacting their ability to rent apartments or to consider other expenditures that they might make, meeting tuition payment bills, and feeling the weight and pressure of financing of higher education. In both of your cases, could you say a few words about how much of a concern you have about the debt, Alex, in your case, that you've already accumulated? And Becky, as you think about 3 more years of paying tuition at the new school, does that give you deep concern, or how is it affecting your thinking and concerns about the road ahead?
I can start off. So I think that student debt is often seen as good debt because interest rates are lower compared to other debt, such as credit card debt. But in reality, from personal experience, I believe that there's no such thing as good debt, and that I want to graduate with the least amount of debt as possible. And I think that I have a new mindset, whereas when I was going in and starting my first year, it was sort of like I will take on a certain amount of debt in order to get my degree, and then I was focused on graduating and getting a job that would get me out of that debt. But I think that with college, there's a low return on investment or no guaranteed return on investment. I think that a lot of people are successful when they go through the college process, but it's not a guarantee. And so my new perspective on it is going forward and changing and transitioning through schools is that I'm focusing on going and attending a university that's going to give me more of a scholarship and where I'm going to have less debt coming out.
So does that mean that you're actually considering potentially not going back to the new school and looking for a different institution that might give you a better financial package and less of a debt structure at graduation time?
Definitely. I don't want to get into any more debt than I already am in right now. So my focus is definitely transitioning to a new school that's not the new school, and yeah, and figuring out a different debt situation.
Alex, before you respond, let me just quickly say that again to our listening audience, and I believe there are people from the higher education community who are tuning into the conversation today. I should mention that I spent 31 years of my own life at the University of Massachusetts at Boston. When I left, I was the associate chancellor at the university. And I want to say that these choices that students are making right now with regards to deeper understanding of the debt that they might have to experience and the structuring of loans that they might take are extremely important. So colleges have to pay attention to what Becky just said. If the packages aren't going to be working to their advantages, students are looking carefully at these numbers, and they're going to choose institutions that have better plans for them and better possibilities for graduating and putting them on a path so that they can immediately get in the workforce and be successful. And being burdened down or weighed down with great amounts of debt aren't going to be helpful to students. And that's certainly what we are recommending to them, that students need to look carefully at these numbers and parents need to look carefully at these numbers and select institutions that are going to give them the best possible pathway for success. So Alex, you've completed Northeastern. Looking in the rearview mirror, are you concerned about the debt that you're carrying now? And what's your thoughts about the choices that you've made? And I know from a previous conversation that you and I had, you mentioned a friend of yours who didn't go to college and went immediately to work in a very good job and is I think he might have made a down payment on a house already and has a car and is doing okay. So that again is one of the questions I think that people who are in the pipeline or coming out of the end of the pipeline are looking at these kinds of factors as they weigh the choices that they've made. So you're out, you graduated. What are your thoughts about the whole course of action that you took?
Well, I went to Northeastern because I was awarded a scholarship where I would have to pay very little money to go to school. And through savings, I actually don't have any debt coming out of school, which I'm very grateful for. And so that was really my big thing going into school. As Rebekah pointed out earlier, there's no guarantee that you're going to get a job when you come out. So, you're already stuck in the red, really. You owe money, but you don't really have anything. So that was my big thing about going to school. Just where could I save the most amount of money and come out with school with the least amount of debt? Just because, here I am now post grad and, there's a hiring freeze with this pandemic and everything going on. And I know a lot of 2020 grads are finding a difficult time getting into their career fields of choice that they want to go into. And it's more difficult than some may have anticipated. And so that was my big thing. I just wanted to save as much money as I could while I was in school. So when I came out, I didn't owe anything, and I could just move on from there.
That's a very, very excellent response to the question that I asked, and it really caused me to think secondarily about a very important point that you made, which was that you were able to go to Northeastern with some substantial scholarships that were focused on your doing well in school prior to applying to Northeastern and being a highly competitive student that they wanted to attract and they wanted you to graduate. And I think for young people who are watching this show or may listen to it in the future, that this is another preparatory factor that you have to consider when you're thinking about higher education. That is, the better you can prepare yourself before you apply to college. Keep your grades up, take competitive courses, be involved in your broader community. All of these things contribute to the kinds of support structures that colleges are looking for in a broad-based and diverse student population with different skills and abilities and bringing different talents to the university experience that they can share with their colleagues. All of these factors influence the kinds of packages that institutions put together for students as they pursue their higher education. And so I would say also, Becky, as you're thinking about the road ahead and where you might consider, that's going to be assets that you can use as well, because you've gained some important insights since you took a year, left the new school, and you're going to come back into the conversation with much deeper insights. And so we're constantly in Inversant sharing information and trying to delve deeper into the kinds of landscapes and the kinds of issues that students are facing, families are facing, and what we can learn from those experiences that will be beneficial to students as they pursue their higher education. I'd like to quickly turn to something we also talked about a couple of weeks ago, and that is that higher education is perceived to be in the United States a vehicle to enhance one's opportunities as they lie ahead. That is, I mean, there's been many discussions, many folks have said people who have a baccalaureate degree, on average, over the course of their lifetime, will earn, upwards of $1 million more than a person with just a high school diploma. This is a very enticing type of a statement, and it says there's real opportunities that lie ahead for people who pursue higher education. When I went to college, I won't say how many years ago, but it was a few years ago, the opportunity vector was entirely different than it is today. As an African-American male, the doors were opening up. It was on the heels of the civil rights movement, and colleges and universities were making opportunities available to people like me, saying, we want to give you a higher education so that you can have opportunities that your parents might not have had, or your brothers and sisters might not have had. So opportunity was a major reason for my pursuing higher education. As the two of you look at it today, do you still see that higher education still is that vehicle for change that can transform the opportunities that you have in the future? And that as you consider it, do you still believe that higher education is an avenue for prosperity and for potential success as you look to the future?
Well, I think it's a very complicated situation that we're in right now, especially with like the coronavirus going on and stuff like that. I think that the platform that we're all in is changing, and we don't know exactly how we're going to fare when we graduate. I mean, I think that a lot of people will be able to use the benefits that they got from their degree in their college situation and be able to find jobs. But I think at the same time, a lot of things, the job market is shifting. So I don't know if I can exactly speak to what it's going to be like because I'm not sure. And I think that's a place where a lot of people that are in college and graduating from college and thinking about college, it's just like a lot of uncertainty. And we don't know whether this is going to be something that's going to be a part of our nation, like specifically in the next coming years.
So Alex, what's your thoughts about, do you feel having the degree behind you at this time, that's enhanced your ability to be more competitive as you go out into the job market and present yourself to companies and businesses and other opportunities that might lie ahead for you?
I definitely think that by going to college and by earning a degree, that's definitely opened a lot of doors and opportunities. But at the same time, you have to wage in like, how much money are you willing to pay for that? Like, how much money are you willing to go into debt? Because as you mentioned before, like one of my friends, he didn't go to school, but he found himself a job, and just by, learning skills in a trade, he's been able to buy a home, buy a car. And here I am 4 years later, and it's like, I have a degree, but I don't have that house. I don't have that car. And, lifetime earnings and data support that, in my lifetime, I should earn more money, but at the moment, I don't see those rewards.
And I also wanted to add that it's also about networking and what kind of network that you have as an individual. And like, yes, you can have two people that both graduate from college, but one person has that network. So they're going to find that job that they want faster than a person that doesn't have a network. And there could be a person that did graduate, but has a network, and a person that didn't graduate from college, but has a network and connections. So I think it's about your education and your degree, but it's also about whether you have the network and connections and you have the people that you can call and get internships and then move up from that level.
That's an excellent point. And I think that it's worth emphasizing again. The more you can communicate and talk with people that are in the pipeline, already through the pipeline or considering the pipeline, the better information that you have. And this is certainly a game. The higher education arena is certainly an arena where good information is absolutely vital in the decisions that you want to make. Let me ask a question with regards to as you're having conversations with your peers, your colleagues and friends who are your age. There's been a lot of discussion that I've been hearing and reading about relative to taking a gap year, that is before immediately heading into college, taking a year off to really look at the landscape. Alex, maybe that's what your friend did and said, I'm going to look to see what kind of jobs and opportunities are available. I found a job I like. It's paying me a good salary. I'll put college off and defer that until I save some money, perhaps get established in my household and move on. So do you find, as you're talking to your colleagues and friends, that they're exploring more options than just simply graduate from high school, go directly to college, which used to be the norm for younger people?
I definitely think that taking a gap year is an option that people should consider. Besides the cost of living, it doesn't cost you any money, or whatever you decide to do. I know some people decide to travel in that year, or some people even decide to work and earn money, but I think it's definitely an option that people should consider. It gives you a little bit more time to think about if you truly want to go to school, and you can think more about what you want to do in that time. Like for me, I know right out of high school, I didn't know necessarily what I wanted to study. Like, I knew I wanted to go to school, but I didn't know what I wanted to study. And luckily, my first year, I was just able to take general classes and those mandatory courses that you need. But if I would chose an institution where I couldn't do that, I might have been paying for classes that in the end didn't even matter, or I'd have to pay for extra classes just to catch up and to finish on time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that especially if you want to go to college for the next 4 years, taking a gap year is a great idea because you'll be able to sort of take that time to work and also figure out what you want to do. And like Alex was saying, like depending on your financial aid package, you may not be able to afford to take general classes or like sort of shift around and see what you really want to do. And colleges aren't really going to advise you to not go because they want, at the end of the day, they're a corporation and they do want to get your tuition. And it might not be the best idea for you to take classes that might not go towards your eventual major and end up in either a little more debt or a little more time that you could have saved by making money on your own or getting some experience during that gap year.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with students who are making decisions like that, because it really does give them an opportunity to gain more insights and more information about choices that they have to make. And I think your point, Becky, also with regards to colleges and universities market themselves with highly sophisticated materials. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year in America creating portfolios and creating scenarios that really draw students to their institutions and entice them to come. But sometimes it may not be the best decision that you can make to just immediately be enticed by these options and make a decision that in the long run might not be helpful to you. And related to this, there's also the question, sometimes when we talk about higher education, we don't realize that there are a variety of different institutions. And for many students, a 2-year institution prior to going directly to a 4-year institution is another viable option. One, it can help students, as you were saying, Alex, zero in on what their real academic interests are and what they want to pursue in their 4-year degree. It's much less costly than going directly to a 4-year. And then once in 2-year, they can transfer to a 4-year institution that may have a baccalaureate program that they think might better align with what it is that they were able to zero in on the 2-year experience. Have either of you had any opportunity to talk with your friends who have attended 2-year institutions, and what kinds of feedback have you gotten with regards to that option?
Yeah, well, one of my friends, he actually goes to school with me at Northeastern now, and we went to high school together. And so he took his first 2 years and he went to Mass Bay. And the reason for him doing that was to save that money. He was able to save a lot of money by going there for 2 years and by not having to pay the $60,000, $65,000, whatever it costs at Northeastern now. And he was able to save that money, and now he's paying for school. But it's, he's only paying for being there half the time that he would have been there. So for him, it worked out. I know other people who go to school for 2 years and, they start studying a course and they think that's what they want to do, but then they realize like, all right, like maybe school isn't what I want to do. And so for them, it's also a better decision than going to a 4-year school just because of how much money they're saving. So I definitely think that going to a 2-year institution is a good idea. One, to save money, and two, to figure out what you want to do again if you need more time.
Becky, I see you nodding your head. Do you think that that's...
I was agreeing that I don't know anyone personally that's done that, but I was thinking about the idea of going to a college that costs less and then transferring to a college that costs more, and that's a wonderful way to save money.
Yeah, I think that, in our society, in America in particular, there's been somehow, unfortunately, they played the game that if you go to a 2-year institution, it's somehow a lesser education than going directly to a 4-year institution. But I do have to raise the question that large numbers of young people in America begin their studies in community colleges and go on to be extremely successful. And I should say, we recently just appointed a new chancellor at University of Massachusetts at Boston, who began his career at a community college and ended up going to UC Berkeley and getting his doctorate there and going on to prestigious institutions across the country. But his career began with a very modest decision about making a decision that was within his economic reach and using the institution as a platform to develop as an academic and a scholar, and it proved to be very successful to him. And I think lots of people in the country, in fact, pursue these courses of action. I should mention also, however, we have 40 million people in the United States who have some post-secondary education but don't have a credential. So there are lots of people who go to college, aren't successful because of economic factors, or that life intervenes in some way, or they had to go to jail, they had to go get a job and go on and pursue some other activities, and for one reason or another had to leave school. And the question is, they may be carrying debt and therefore making it more difficult for them to get back on the pathway of higher education. These are, again, tough outcomes that come sometimes from just not having good information beforehand and going on to higher education. So I'm wondering, again, with both of you, and Alex, I'll start with you again, as you look in this, as I refer to it as this rear view mirror, what kinds of jobs are you actually looking at right now? And how is the Northeastern helping you in your career pursuits as you're looking for options that lie ahead?
So in school, I studied history and journalism. And I worked in the athletic department for 3 of my 4 years at Northeastern. So initially, what I wanted to do right after school was, work for a professional sports team or a collegiate sports team. But as we can see, sports are just now coming back. So that really wasn't an option. So then the other thing that I wanted to do, I want to work in education, kind of like you, Charlie. So, so I've been looking for jobs in really in like education administration, dealing with educational equity. So that's something that I really had a passion about since high school, I guess. Just from having those role models in high school who changed my life and changed lives around me. That was definitely something. So just looking into education and how I could get into that field, but still kind of wanting to go into sports. That's what I want to do.
Sports management or
something just something
business of sports. Business of sports is pretty big in America as well.
Right. And so the second part of your question, how has Northeastern helped us? Well, they have programs where you can intern and co-op at these different companies. As I said, I was working at Northeastern while I was a student there. So that helped me get experience, meet new people, and find other opportunities. And I think that the school does a great job at helping students find their passion and what they want to do, and putting them in a field and like placing them in the field while they're still in school so they can get that experience. And, it's like you can either see if you like that or not, or you can even advance in that.
Let me quickly turn to the present situation that higher education is dealing with right now and young people are dealing with, and that is this pandemic. It's completely disrupted higher education in the country, primarily because of the virus. Students have not been able to be on campus and to take classes on their campuses and directly from their faculty. This has resulted in an abrupt shift onto a virtual platform where colleges and universities are putting their courses as best they can online and asking students who are enrolled to continue online and new students who are considering going to potentially take courses virtually. Becky, this is going to directly impact you because you're going back to school and it's likely that you won't be going back to a campus. So in light of those challenges, do you have any thoughts or any advice that you would share right now with regards to what you're thinking about relative to your ongoing education in light of the environment we're in right now?
Yeah, so my advice, I know that a lot of schools are saying they're going to be online. I know that some schools are saying they're going to do sort of like a half online, half in person situation as well. And what I've heard about that situation is that some schools have been saying they're doing like half online, but it's probably going to end up being all online, and people are still going to end up paying full tuition for online classes. So I think it's definitely a tricky situation. And I know that a lot of college students don't have the option to not go back to school. My advice would be that if people have that option to take a gap year, to take a semester off and really feel out the situation, because I know that most colleges don't really know exactly what they're going to be doing or exactly what the next couple of months or the next semester is going to look like. Personally, for me, I'm actually transferring to Simmons University and I'll be taking classes online. And so for me, I got a good financial aid package, so I don't really have to worry about debt for the next semester, especially because I won't be on campus. So I don't have to worry about paying for housing. So I know that in my situation, I've gotten definitely a blessing. So I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm going to have to pay full tuition for classes. But it's definitely a tough situation because what I've been hearing about people that are attending online classes, whether that's high school or college, that it's really not the same education quality. So I think that it's difficult and it's hard to make that decision.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the dilemma that a lot of Alex, you're out, so you left prior to the shutdown. But what's the feedback that you're getting from your colleagues and friends that are still enrolled at Northeastern and are considering what's going to happen in September?
Yeah, well, they actually shut down classes like right when we got back from spring break. So, I finished out college online at home. And then I took a couple of classes this summer as well. So, but I definitely think it's challenging to study online versus in person. One, just because you don't have the same routine that you normally have, getting up, going to class, actually taking part in these physical activities that come along with going to school. But also just like the resources that are no longer available to you. So the library is, a place where thousands of people study, no longer open. Like going to see your advisor, you can't see them in person. You got to go online now. You have to book a meeting with them. And, like seeing your professor for office hours, like you can't just walk into their office and ask them questions. You have to send them emails, set up a meeting on Zoom. And then the last piece is like just interaction with your peers. So I know a lot of times in class, I'd make friends in class, study with them, and being online made that 10 times harder. It's more just like individual learning. And if you're good at that, that's great. You'll probably do very well. But I know that was a challenge for me. And I know that Northeastern is planning on going back this fall and implementing a few initiatives to keep students on campus and at home. And so, I guess they'll learn on the fly how that'll work. I know some of my friends who are going back are actually taking a leave because they don't think it's worth what they're paying for. As Rebekah mentioned, like you're still paying the same amount to be at home and take your classes there. And so I know people who think that, you know, part of what you're paying for is being there on campus. And like I said, getting those resources that are no longer available to you.
Yeah, I do think that this is, again, presenting very, very real challenges as we think about how the higher education enterprise is going to go forward, how long we're going to be in this mode that we're in right now. And there are some people who I talk with who say that this virtual or hybrid type of education is likely to be with us for a long time into the future for reasons that may no longer even be about the virus. It may just simply be that online courses are cheaper to deliver than in class courses. And so a combination of online and in-class opportunities in the future may be the norm as opposed to the exception as it is right now. Let me, if I can, did you have something to say, Becky?
Oh yeah, we have a question from Prospanica Boston. The question is, when you think of equity in higher education, what does that mean to you? So I can speak a little bit about that. And I think that another thing that is a good tie-in with what we're talking about is with online education, not just for college students, but also like high school seniors as well, like who has access to technology. If everything's going to be online, not everybody has access to computers. Libraries haven't been open for months now, so not everyone even has the opportunity to continue their education online. So there's going to be a good portion of students who suddenly don't really have any like future in the education that they've been used to. And I think there are also the racial inequalities of higher education in terms of like predatory loans and how lower income students tend to be students of color. Thus, students of color are going to be the ones that have more debt. And so just another thing that we have to think about with online education, as well as people with learning disabilities and that no longer have accommodations, online accommodations, like how they're going to learn just without having that face-to-face interaction.
Yeah, I think that is a critically important question that we're confronting. And as I think about Inversant again, I want to say that one of the challenges that we're constantly facing with the students and families that we're working with is trying to address the questions that grow out of the achievement gap and the equity gap that rightfully follows on the heels of underinvestment in certain schools versus other schools. And so students don't have access to the technology, the resources, the tools and supports that might exist in more affluent communities or more affluent schools. And so that puts students at a disadvantage with regards to when they enter the first day of their college experiences, knowing how to maneuver through the institution and take advantage of opportunities that might be available there. So Alex, did you find when you were at Northeastern that the equity issues with regards to student preparation, student options, student opportunities that might be available were real? Are they doing a better job of addressing them? Or what are your thoughts about that topic?
So I definitely think like they definitely try, but there's definitely more they can do. So I know when there was the shift to online learning and the shift when students, you know, were forced to go back home. You know, like there were a lot of communities where, you know, the school might not necessarily have thought about. I actually wrote an article about how people who don't have access to technology at home, how they were struggling to like learn while they're at home. You know, like at school, they have Wi-Fi. You know, you pay for that in your tuition. They have Wi-Fi. You could go to a computer, you could rent out a laptop, you can do all those things. But like I said, as soon as they closed the school, you didn't have those resources anymore. I know people who went back home and they didn't have internet at home. So they like physically could not even complete their coursework. And so, you know, they had to, you know, tell their professors about those challenges and those struggles. And, you know, the school had to try to find ways to adapt. But I definitely think that there's more that they could be doing for their students and meeting the needs of students.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly a need for much better information and much better guidance and support to these challenges that students are facing. And I wanted to say that as we look at the landscape of what's happening, let's use Boston as an example. When the system shut down, one of the data points that I had regarding the comments that both of you made, that 1 out of every 5 students in the Boston public schools were what they were referred to as digital truants. That is that they, for one reason or another, didn't have the technology or weren't able to access the technology in order to plug back into their schools to keep up with their schoolwork. And so I think that again, with COVID and with what we're seeing as in its aftermath, that this is revealing to us very, very real challenges that we're facing in our democracy about equality of opportunity that exists for all students to be able to fully participate in our democratic society and our economy. And education really suffers when we see some of the glaring problems that are being revealed right now as we're looking at the challenges that we're facing. So I think to go back to the equity issue, it's at the forefront. I believe colleges and universities and many people who are listening to the conversation today recognize that we've got to do a better job in our education system, in our society, trying to level the playing field for all students with regards to choices and opportunities that they have to participate in our economy. We can't have a two-tiered system where based on where your zip code is, whether or not you get a good quality education or whether you don't. And these challenges are critical and vital for us to consider as we go on with our work. Before I get back to a couple of questions, I wanted to just share with our listening audience that, again, this is Inversant. We're a family-centered savings account and educational opportunity program based in Boston. And I haven't really spent a lot of time talking about parents relative to our conversation yet, but the two of you have been the beneficiaries of outstanding and amazing parents who have been behind you every step of the way in the choices that you've made. And you've been anyone who's listening to this conversation can see what the benefits that accrue to young people who have parents that get behind them, support them all the way, give them choices, get good information, and put them on a path towards success. And both of you are strong examples of that. And so I'd like to say to our listening audience that in Inversant, we have a variety of different strategies and approaches that we're engaged in with regards to our conversations with parents and how we gather information that we share with parents. And so we're a complex set of programs that make up the Inversant family. And as we continue these dialogues and the forums that have come in the future, we're going to make you aware of different threads within our organization that will give you a deeper insight into why we think these conversations are vital and critical for parents to understand so that they can make choices that will enable them to have students like Alex and Becky who are informed, engaged, and making a difference in their own pursuit of higher education. So that was my commercial. To come back to the context of our conversation, both of you do have outstanding parents. I've had the joy and the pleasure of meeting both of them, all of them, and talking to them about our program. They're deeply engaged in our work. How important has your parent support and guidance been to you with regards to where you are right now on your path towards higher ed? Alex, I'm going to begin with you.
Okay. Well, I'm sure my parents are watching, so hey guys. But they've definitely been the ones who've like pushed me to like continue in school and continue in higher education. So even when I didn't see it possible, like they still saw a way and still saw a path. And you know, they let me know, like, listen, if this is something that you truly wish to do, like it can happen. And then the other thing that they actually like were very helpful with was just like letting me in on like, you know, like the secrets of like finances and stuff. So, like obviously I had the school that I wanted to go to, my dream school and all that. And even though I could have went, it just wasn't economically feasible. So just by my parents letting me know about like our status and like what they could pay for school, that just helped me understand a lot more about finances and how important they really are in deciding where you go to school. Because if it was up to me, I'd be, $150,000 in debt right now. And so they definitely helped me make the right decisions, and not necessarily the right decisions, but better decisions and more informed decisions. So just by keeping me informed about conversations that they were having with like people that they interacted with, and like sharing their experiences, I was able to learn through that and didn't have to do that alone.
And in my case, my mom has definitely supported me throughout my entire process. She's the one that introduced me to Inversant and helped me be a part of the program. So I think that in terms of the school that I was at in New York and transitioning to a different school, she's helped me and supported me in figuring out what I want to do, because I loved my school, but in terms of like, and I love the people who were there, but in terms of like financially and some of the classes that I was taking that I didn't feel like were challenging enough, that was a part of the reason that I left. So my mom has definitely supported me into making the transition to going to a new school and figuring out what's best for me and which steps I'm going to take continuing on my path in education.
Well, that's exactly what we've been trying to emphasize in the work that we're doing. And I'd like to say to many of the people who are listening in with us today, we know that we have a lot of our friends and partner organizations listening in. And the fact that we're trying to emphasize is that just presuming that young people on their own can get all this information and filter through all of it and make the right choices by themselves is just not a good way to think about what it is that we're trying to do. We have to get involved in the conversation with them. We have to explore with them and share what we learn with them so that they can understand the range of opportunities that are available and the potential risks that might be associated with choices that they make. In many instances, we're talking with parents who themselves may not have gone to college, and they see this as the culmination of one of the greatest dreams that they've ever had for their children, which is to see them go off to college and to have a different career path. But getting good information for doing that is absolutely vital and critical, and not just to look at the prize of higher education, but look at the value of education. And that means getting good information and sharing that with your students. So I think parental engagement, our argument, our theory of action is that parental engagement is at the heart of this resolution of these problems that we're facing in the country around equity and opportunity. And I noticed that we got a question that says, equity and inequity existed in college and university for decades, but does inequity manifest differently today? So that actually is a question that we discussed in our team before we put this program on the air. And we used the example of when I went to school in the 70s. At the time that I was going to college, the critical concerns were access, opportunity, and choice in higher education. So if you were a minority student, if you were a low-income student, these colleges and universities were not really open at that time in the 70s the way that they are today. So the equity issue then was, if the door was open, you had an opportunity to get a higher education. And that in and of itself was a major achievement. Today, access, equity, opportunity in higher education is broadly open, so that the doors are pretty much open to students who want to attend, but the risks in attending are extremely difficult. So while you may want to attend believing that going to college is your pathway to success and prosperity, in the environment that we're in today, as has already been discussed, it could be very risky for you to take loans and go directly into college and not be clear about what it is that you want to do, because you got in the door. But the question is, are you going to graduate with a credential that enables you to participate fully in society as you go forward? So this equity and opportunity variable has changed over time. And I think, to put it back to my colleagues here, the value proposition that you have to consider is this degree today going to equip me to be successful tomorrow? And that's what we're trying to get at through these conversations, and that we'll be exploring as we go further into these discussions. Is now the time to get a college degree? Is the proposition that it will prepare you for greater success and greater economic opportunity in the future still a valid argument? And we think that it is, we believe that it is, but the question is, we have to interrogate that question. We have to continue to ask ourselves, are we sure? Are we certain? Are we continually analyzing to ensure that the opportunities that we believe are available are still accessible and available to the students that we serve? So let me come back to my noble and well-informed colleagues here to say, do you believe that the value proposition for higher education still has merit as you see it and consider it today? Let's begin with you, Alex, since you're the graduate.
Yeah, I definitely think there's still some merit to it, as we see a lot of entry-level positions require a 4-year degree, even though they might not necessarily need that. It still is a requirement. So like a lot of jobs, you can see, like, you can learn them on the job, or like with a little bit of experience, they're doable. But we can see that education and that degree is something that a lot of positions require and something that they want, even though they're not necessarily needed. So for me, it's not just like, okay, can you do this job, but do you have like the prerequisites just to even be able to compete with people who are competing for that position? And so, like I said before, like, it opens up the door for more opportunities and it allows you more access. But it's not necessary. I don't know if it has that great of a value in the end.
That's a profoundly important statement. Becky, what is your thought about the value proposition?
In my knowledge, I know that there are a lot of positions that require that degree in terms of like something that it's necessary. But I think that for the jobs where it's less necessary to have that degree, but they still put it as a requirement, it's often because college and graduating from college is seen as a marker of hard work. You're able to manage your time well, you're able to see things through, you're able to persevere. Like, they're able to use that as a marker of, we have this person who's done this hard thing. They've worked for 4 years and they've graduated. So even though it might not be necessary for the position, it's often used as a tool to see if that candidate is ready for that position in that sense. So I think that as much as it's necessary for certain positions and not necessary for others, that for the foreseeable future, it's going to be necessary. And a lot of jobs might not have it necessary, but I think that for the most part, it's still going to be necessary unless something is changing soon. And that I know that people are starting to think about it differently, but at the same time, I know older generations still think of it as a requirement. If you talk to any parent, they're going to say, yes, my kid is going to college. But I think when we're talking to people my age, it's more like, I'm going to find a different avenue. I'm going to use the internet. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to create an app. I'm going to market something, and that's how I'm going to make my money. So I think that it's a generational difference as well. That it depends on who you talk to. So that's my
I think that is a profoundly important insight that both of you made. And I think that the lesson that I get out of that conversation is that the landscape with regards to higher education is slowly shifting under our feet right now, and that it is a much more, again, more complicated set of options and issues that young people are looking at with regards to the institutions that they might attend, or whether or not they choose to immediately attend at all. I think for the higher education folks who are listening today, this is a prophetic insight into issues that we have to deal with at the academy with regards to what are the options and opportunities that we're putting before young people, and what's the cost associated with our ability to attract them to our institution and to equip them to successfully make their way into the economy and into the workforce and into our communities in successful and viable ways. So what I'd like to suggest is that we've had an outstanding conversation, and I really want to thank the two of you. You have both been absolutely brilliant, even more so than me, particularly with regards to attributing Becky to the wrong institution as I began this journey. But I think that wherever you went to school, the talents that you have are certainly going to continue to be illuminated. You've got a great road ahead, and we're very excited about the future that you have. Alex, in your case, the road ahead looks really great for you. And I think that with whatever road choices that you make, we're going to see a great success. We're going to monitor you for the next 5 years, of course, to see how it all plays out. So let me say in closing to our listening audience, we've constructed this Inversant Insight to be a conversation. This is a program in a different type of a mode and a different type of a framework. We're going to be asking some of you who are right now in the audience to join us in the future to reflect on some of the issues that you've heard discussed today. If you're in higher education, how is your institution going to respond to some of the issues that Becky and Alex raised today? What are you doing about the cost variables? How are you looking at student debt? And how is that going to be communicated to students that you'd like to bring to your institution? For people in the private sector who are looking at and listening to us today, what specific skills, talents, and abilities do you think are most viable for you for college graduates, and how does that align with the institutions that you're looking to for your employees of the future, the leaders of the corporations for the future? So there's a lot for us to continue to discuss. And in particular, as we do our work with parents, there's a lot we have to share with our parents about options that they have for their children and opportunities that exist in higher ed. For those of you who would like to know more about our work, please visit our website at Inversant, and you can get some information about our team who are behind the scenes on this presentation today. We've got some excellent people that are doing a lot of work, and we're happy to share our information with you and collaborate with you in the work that we're doing. We'd like to learn more about what it is that you're doing and what you're learning and how that might influence the work that we see ahead. Thank you all very much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation. And Becky and Alex, thank you very much for kicking off this program and getting us heading in the right direction. Thanks.
And sorry, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to share my experiences, and I'm hopeful that those listening have learned something valuable from this discussion.
That's an excellent way to bring it all to a close. We'll end for today. Please stay abreast of our website and our information in Facebook and Twitter, which are where all of this is being broadcast live. And we will be letting you know when we'll be back together again. If you have ideas for issues that we didn't discuss today that you think we should discuss, let us know, and we'll bring them up in our next conversation. Until then, and until we meet again, best of luck, be well, and take care. Look forward to seeing you soon.